G'day, my name is Chris, and on today's episode, I'm going to explain how range is calculated using the EPA method, WLTP, and NEDC, and what that means for the Tesla Standard Range Plus in Australia, and why it won't get 460 kilometers on one charge.
I don't wanna see when you're at parties with Ollie and the others. You know I really got along with him and your family. Your ex got barely so do it right. You know, no.
Okay, so let's talk about the American EPA method. Now, this was actually originated way back in 1978 and it was updated in 2009 and it's conducted in a lab on a rolling road. Now there's actually two parts to this, and the first one is that they go about 17 kilometers or so. I'll put the exact number on the screen now, and they vary the speed between like 32 kilometers per hour and 96 kilometers per hour, and they do a mixture of stop-start driving as well as highway driving. And that's a key because the test in total is about 45 kilometers or so, and for that very reason the car is given the best opportunity to obviously speed up, uses power. When it slows down, it regenerates all the energy back into the battery, some of the energy rather, and in doing so, and the range in which they cover turns out to be the most accurate method, like real world range that you could actually get. We've arrived in Gisborne, and this is where we actually had to stop for about 30 or 40 minutes when we went and had some afternoon tea with the kids. We're not going to do that today, but that's okay because I can actually simulate the amount of drain that this car has just by leaving it parked out and about, because remembering this car is it is actually always connected to the internet, and we've got the Sentry mode on, and there's going to be a little bit of drain there, but I'll put those in the figures at the very end. Okay, but let me just finish off the EPA method for 1 second. Now, in addition to those two other parts of the test, they actually do a third part where for 16 kilometers, they vary between like 77 and 96 kilometers per hour. So it's a culmination of 3 different tests simulating what is realistically real world driving. All right, and as you'll soon learn, the WLTP method and the NEDC method, they just don't do that. Hey, before we get on to the next part of our journey, let's check out the economy so far. We've arrived with, 59% state of charge and average 185 watt hours per kilometre, okay? So when we get to back home, what do you think that average is going to be? Is it going to get better? Remembering, we're going to go up a mountain, and then back down again, and then home. All right, let's get going. Okay, this episode has actually been sponsored by Tesla Taxi, who have been very kind in actually loaning this car out to me between rentals in Victoria. So, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do a live cross to Millen. Okay, thanks for joining me, Millen. And look, a big thank you also for allowing me this opportunity to drive an EV long term because, it's a really great experience and obviously other people would love to try it too.
Yeah, no worries, Chris. It's really good that you're able to help us out by looking after it in between rentals in December and January. As I mentioned, we're taking it across to Adelaide for January, February. There's a few rental bookings there and there's no Teslas currently available for rental. And we're really looking to get a bit of utilisation out of the car over the next few months between Melbourne and Adelaide until the numbers fill up in those areas for the Tesla Taxi rental fleet.
Sorry to interrupt you, Millen, but this is a bit where, when I did the Nissan Leaf 2 range test, that I asked my son David, who's actually recording right now, to note down what our current state of charge is and what the actual projected range is before we go up this mountain. Now, there's only a 1,000 meter high mountain, so it's not exactly that tall. The distance total is like 10 kilometers, and let's see how the Tesla Model 3 handles it. All right, sorry about that, Millum. Now, look, that's really encouraging and really great to hear. Can you tell me, how's it been going with Tesla Taxi since you've launched?
Yeah, no, it's really good, Chris. We've actually had over 600 rental requests now since we started and got our cars at the end of September. So in about 3 months, we've managed to raise 600 rental requests of interest, and obviously a lot of those do translate into bookings for our owners around Australia. We've got 2 Model X cars based in Brisbane. We've got the Performance Model 3 in Brisbane as of today, and we've got a couple of standard range Model 3s in Brisbane as well. Most of that fleet can service the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast also. Plus we've got a 2017 Model X in Sydney and a couple of other Model 3s in Sydney, and we've also got a Performance Model 3 in Melbourne, a 2018 Model X in Melbourne, and a few other Standard Range Plus in Melbourne as of this month as well. So yeah, the fleet and the requests are growing really rapidly, which is great, and we do hope to expand our operations overseas in 2020 also.
All right, that's great to hear, Millen. And look, seriously impressive that, you know, owners and renters are getting the opportunity to, well, get EVs out in Australia. And well, no doubt, you know, be good to see you when you come down to Melbourne, whenever that is. And yeah, let's try and get this car out and about a bit more, eh?
Thanks, Chris. It's really great to have you on board, and your channel's just generating fantastic response for us and for all the other people you mentioned. So yeah, keep up the great work on YouTube. Thanks again, Chris.
All right, well that's great, Millen. And look, and thank you to Tesla Taxi in sponsoring this episode. And yeah, you take care, okay? Alright, we've arrived to the top of Mount Macedon, and we have arrived with 49% state of charge, and that's what the Tesla suggested we're going to get there with. Pretty impressive, eh? We've now consumed 274 watt hours per kilometre, so that's really skyrocketed. And the reason? We've gone up a mountain, okay? So we've had to expend a lot more energy getting up here, and well, on the way down, it'd be curious to see how we actually go about regenerating that, okay? And just so that all those playing along at home know what I'm talking about here, if I move it over to distance, we've got 178 kilometers of range left. So I'll put on screen now the bottom of Mount Macedon versus now at the top, okay? And the real stickler here, or the real interesting part, is going to be when we get back down to the bottom. Let's talk about the new European driving cycle. And well, this thing is so not new. It's actually originated back in the 1980s. And well, this test of all that I'm going to talk to today is actually the shortest one. And it's performed, again, in a lab on rollers, okay? And they only do 16 kilometers or 20 minutes. And it's got 3 parts to it. But essentially, they only go from about 30 kilometers per hour up to about 120 kilometers per hour. And the real stickler here is that, well, they don't have aircon on. They don't run nothing in the car like a heating or air conditioning. And that's, well, going to seriously affect the results they get. Recalling before how the American EPA method, they go a lot further and test in a lot of different variety of methods. So of all the methods that you choose to actually represent a potential range of an EV, the NEDC is by far the worst. Yeah, so much so that, well, this car, the Tesla Model 3 in Australia, has a stated 460 kilometers of range, whereas in America, the very same car, using the EPA method, it's got 402 kilometers of range. Go figure, right? Yeah, but we'll talk more as we go because, well, there's also the European standard WLTP. But hey, let's get back down this mountain. Another Model 3, hi! Isn't it great when you see another EV on the roads in Australia? Because, well, there aren't very many of them. So, hey, if you see another EV on the road, give it a wave. Yeah, do. Moving back to the WLTP sort of stuff. Now, this test, kind of like the American one that's done in 3 phases, well, this is actually done in 4 phases, again on a rolling road. simulating both urban and highway driving, and they go faster than the American method, but nonetheless, the test is absolutely repeatable, and they do it in a controlled conditions. And well, this is what VW picked up on, that, well, hey, the car says to itself, I'm doing a test right now because this is exactly when they're going to accelerate. Oh, this is exactly when they brake. Yeah, I'm being tested. I better kick in my emissions protocol. VW, naughty, naughty. Anyway, what I do appreciate about the WLTP cycle though, is that they have the air conditioner or the heater on, and they allow the car makers to actually utilize, devices which actually help with extending this range, let's say. Okay, so think of Blue Drive, like what Mazda might use, or whatever that system is called. Okay, but it's kind of semi-accurate and kind of close to what the EPA method is with regards to range, because let's face it, this one, the WLTP, is only just slightly off what the EPA method is. There is one huge, and it's huge issue with this test, and well, I can't do it here on the freeway, but I'll do it where we're close to home, because you'll be shocked at just maybe how not real world range this test actually is. Okay, so what's the big deal, Chris? Why is the WLTP so wrong? Well, let me give an example. I got to stop for a second because it's about acceleration. All right, ready? I'm going to stop. I'm going to press start and then go. 3, 2, 1. The WLTP cycle actually requires the test to go from 0 to 48 kilometers per hour in 15 seconds. And did you see how slow that was? Like, honestly, that's maybe how that really annoying driver drives. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right, let's wrap this up. Okay, we're back home, and well, we had some dinner, the car's plugged in, getting juiced up with energy from the sun via my Powerwall 2 over there, and the results are really surprising. So what I'll do now is I'll step you through basically from Mount Macedon to home, then we'll rewind and we'll go over the total journey and compare that to the Nissan Leaf 2, and then put together about why the NED cycle is not the best way to actually tell consumers what the potential range is going to be. All right, so from Mount Macedon down to, well, home, it's suggested that would arrive with that 45% state of charge. Remembering, we departed with 49%. What do you think we arrived with? It actually turned out to be about 40%. Yeah, 40%. So that's a 50-kilometer drive, mostly downhill. Okay, conditions weren't exactly very good. In fact, it was very windy, very blustery. And yeah, we're driving home in normal traffic doing highway speeds of 110 kilometers per hour. And the surprising thing though is that despite us using more energy than what the Tesla app had anticipated, remembering that so far for every leg of this journey, it has met or even bettered what it actually estimated you'll arrive with your state of charge. 45% actually arriving at 40%. We only consumed 81 watt hours per kilometer. That's amazing. That is crazy low. Like, the Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus is actually renowned as being the most efficient car at around, I think, about 11.5 kilowatts per 100 kilometers. Yeah, so another way of saying that is like it's 115 watt hours per kilometer. So let's rewind and go over the total trip and try to find out what the actual range of this car truly is, given today's drive. We departed home with 73% state of charge, or 260 kilometers of range. The trip from my home to Gisborne was 31.9 kilometers. So we should have arrived with 228 kilometers of range, but we actually arrived with 219 kilometers. In terms of state of charge though, it was bang on the money. In fact, it was actually a bit better with 61%. And this is where it gets interesting. We consume 185 watt hours per kilometer for that part of the journey, whereas the Nissan Leaf 2 actually used 227. So the next part of the journey was from Gisborne to the very top of Mount Macedon to the Memorial Cross. Departing with 60% of the battery remaining, our range was suggested at 218 kilometers and the trip 19.2 kilometers. So we should have arrived with 198.8 kilometers, but we actually arrived with 178. And this is where the consumption really skyrocketed. We got to 274 watt hours per kilometer. So that's actually quite high, very, very high. In fact, I think it was actually worse than the Nissan Leaf 2, but I didn't record that bit in that video. Let's see how we fared in the next section. This time, we went from the top of Mount Macedon all the way back to home. Leaving with 178 kilometers of range and less 50 kilometers, we should have arrived with about 128 kilometers left of estimated range in the car, but we actually arrived with 145 kilometers of range and only consumed 81 watt hours per kilometer, which is honestly an amazing achievement. The efficiencies of these motors to try to recapture that energy that we spent going up the mountain can't be understated. So the trip overall, what are the sums? Basically, 100 kilometers of travel, yeah, an average of 180 watt hours per kilometer, and we used up 33% of the battery. So let's plug those in to my little online calculator. Using the watt hours per kilometer method, that is basically taking the total battery pack size and dividing it by the number of watt hours per kilometer. Today's drive would have given us about 286 kilometers of range. That is, if I charged this fully to 100% and taken this exact journey and repeated it again and again and again, let's try and eliminate those hills. Pretty damn hard to do that, isn't it? But nonetheless, 286 kilometers versus 460 kilometers, you can understand if you've gone and purchased yourself this car and see that 460 figure on Tesla's website, I think right now you'll be very much annoyed, wouldn't you? Definitely. All right, let's try another method. Using the total battery range kilometer method, that is by using the distance traveled in kilometers divided by the claimed battery percent used by the car. In this case, we did 100.7 kilometers and used 33% of the battery. So the range could have been about 305 kilometers, again on a full charge. 460, 305, again, too big a jump for most. So comparing this car just ever so briefly against the Nissan Leaf 2, the Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus actually averaged about 180 watt hours per kilometer, whereas the Nissan Leaf 2 did the exact same trip with 189 watt hours per kilometer. Yeah, okay, can't explain that. Really, really calm. The drive that we did in the Nissan Leaf 2 was windy and wet, and today it was just very, very windy. Go figure. Anyway, my point is this. When you look at the claimed range of any electric vehicle, look to see how they're actually calculating that range. In Australia, car makers are supposedly required to use the Australian design rules which specify NEDC, supposedly. But here's my beef. Car makers such as Hyundai and others who sell EVs in Australia put the European WLTP in the suggested range of the car, whereas Tesla Australia goes with the very much too generous method of using NEDC. And let me tell you, unless you're in a lab, controlled conditions, aircon off, and you're doing a perfect drive, like you might, if you could in a lab, be behind a truck and you're drafting it, and it's the right temperature and there's no wind around, sure, you could get 460 kilometers. But is that real world range? No, definitely not real world range. As awesome as this car is, I'm just kind of disappointed that Tesla Australia keeps going with the NEDC method, whereas there are others in Australia who put the WLTP, which is almost real world range. All right, well look, that's enough for today. It's a long enough video as it is. I really do hope you've enjoyed it. If you want to see more videos like this, please do subscribe down below. Join me over here on Patreon. And thanks once again to Tesla Taxi in loaning me this vehicle. If you've got any questions or comments, leave them down below. Otherwise, be good and be green. There are very few EVs, that just scared the shit out of me, so I lost my concentration. Can you just stay in your lane? Dude, oh my god, get off your phone! Ah! Honestly, oh, okay. Right, let's do that again.